All right, folks, here we are. This has been a long time coming. I am with one of my dearest friends, Katie Sipa, and I'm going to introduce you like I don't know anything about you so that everyone else can know more about you and who you are and what we're going to be talking about.
All right, go.
All right. So Katie Sipa is an international speaker, retreat writer, and a 9-time Catholic Press Award-winning columnist. She holds a degree in theology from Benedictine College, and her work on Catholic minimalism, spiritual intimacy with Jesus, as well as marriage and family has impacted audiences nationwide. Katie writes for the Catholic Telegraph in Cincinnati and has been featured on several podcasts and radio shows, including this one, this very first one of mine, right? And recently you were on EWTN radio talking about what we're going to talk about tonight, minimalism. And we'll get into it from a Christian perspective, but we might just do like nuts and bolts, minimalism. But Katie's a Nebraska native, I want to say. No, born elsewhere, but you've lived in Nebraska for a long time.
Yeah, most of my life. Yeah.
Where were you born?
A Langley Air Force Base. So Newport News, Virginia, but my
Okay.
family was stationed at Langley. But we moved to Nebraska when I was 2 or 3. So
Okay, so you're basically a native.
sort of native. Yeah.
We've adopted you. You can stay. You can stay. So, and right now you're living in Papillion,
Yes.
Nebraska. So local-ish to where I am, but we don't see each other far enough. So Katie, I want to start off for people that don't know about minimalism or what it is or what it should be. Can you just give us a little brief explanation of about what minimalism is and like what your take is on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Minimalism is one of those terms and trends that has taken on a whole variety of meanings. So I felt quite free to learn about it and then say, okay, this is my go at it. This is my interpretation of it. So with regard to minimalism, my approach is that you examine yourself, your charisms, your gifts, your passions, and you make a life for that. More specifically, I say we examine what God calls us to do. We make a way for that, and then we trim the fat. So the noise, the excess, the time demands that distract from those things, those go, and everything else gets to stay. So minimalism is, at least in my approach, is not at all about paring down your possessions, paring down your temporal demands to be the most minimal possible, right? Because we want to live, but it's about living more fully without all of the noise and excess.
That's so interesting because that is not, even after all the conversations you and I have had, that is not what I think of when I think of minimalism. When I think of minimalism, I think of like the White House where everything's white. There's like a fork, a spoon, per person, and maybe there's not even that many people in the house. I just don't think of it as a way to live your life with what God has called you to do in your particular life. I've never thought about minimalism within the scope of charisms or your apostolate or those kind of things. I've just never thought of that.
Yeah,
So
I think it's typical for people to think of minimalism and pair it with exactly what you said. So like the minimal, like visual imposition, right? So White House, white furniture, white, one fork,
yeah.
and one of each thing. And sure, like that can be absolutely a way to live if that's what you're going for. Absolutely. But I think if you were to walk into my home, you wouldn't know right off the bat, this woman's a minimalist, because we have a small home quite intentionally. It's about 1,400 square feet, maybe a little above for 7 people. And so everything's like our space is taken up, it's occupied, but it's also a small house. It's a small house on purpose. So I think it's really important, especially if you're trying to live simply, to understand that your approach to simplicity and minimalism will be as unique as your own soul,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to follow anybody else's pattern.
That's such a relief. Well, if you would walk
I know, right?
well, if you would walk around my house, I don't know. I struggle with this. So a lot of this is going to be me bouncing ideas off of you for the sake of everybody else that might be listening. But it is so interesting to me when I think about minimalism and how to live it in my life. I have so many things that go on in my head. Like I'm a creative person. And so when I think about minimalizing my craft supplies, it like breaks my heart. And then there's also not trying to get too tangential here, but there's also this element for me of fear of like, and I think it's been exacerbated since COVID because when COVID hit, it was like, well, where am I going to get my clothes? Where am I going to get the things that I might need? And so it kind of sparked this like gathering, like squirrel mentality of like, well, but I need my craft stuff. And like, I don't want to do, and I still have a little bit of that, but I also really just like being surrounded by um things that I might make something out of. But it tends to clutter up my space because I don't have a really succinct way of organizing all of that stuff. And like I realize other people live in my house and it's not my big like art studio. So what do you say to that?
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so when it comes to the things that we have that correspond with our passions, so you talk about your craft stuff. Do you do your craft stuff on a somewhat regular basis? And by that, I mean like even once, twice a year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's something that is life-giving for you, yes?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so Marie Kondo, as a lot of us know, she talks about, holding on to things that spark joy, right? And sure, there is something to that, but I prefer to use the term life-giving
Mm.
because I think that goes a lot deeper than something that like just makes you happy right there in the moment. Oh, this just makes me so happy. I'm going to keep it. It makes me
Yeah.
happy. But no, is it life-giving? Is it contributing to you as a person, to your own soul? Is it contributing to the life of your family, to your vocation?
Mhm.
And when you are participating in your craft things and your activities, what is life-giving for you is ultimately going to be life-giving in your family. I know that when I am doing things that I just relish in and that give me a thrill, when I return to my family, I'm a new woman.
Yes.
I am on fire and excited, and I'm just full of life,
Yep.
and they see it,
Mhm.
you versus when I go to them after having been drained of doing something that isn't as life-giving,
Right.
and life is chock full of those activities that we just have to do anyway, but, the contrast is most definitely present.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to, okay, I have this passion of mine, I need space for it in my home. I think, if you're oscillating back and forth, do I just toss it because I don't do it often? But no, if it's life-giving, then you give yourself that respect and say, "No, I'm not doing this every day. I'm not even doing this once a month. But when I do this, this is good
Yeah.
for me and for my family. And so it deserves its space." And maybe to make sure that that space is not imposing
Yeah.
on the other more frequently demanded things of your life, but at least it has that space.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea of having the things that bring you joy and having the space for it. So I guess this might be a good little transition place to ask you what your minimalist story is. Like what really got you into this? I mean, obviously we know I know you, and so I know you love to give retreats and speak, which I wouldn't, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I wouldn't think takes up that much space in your home. Like you need your computer and maybe a
Does
printer,
it? Yeah, right.
notes, but like what was it that got you into minimalism? Or did you grow up in a family where minimalism was a thing or?
Oh,
Can you?
good questions. No, I living simply was not um a concerted effort in my home growing up. We didn't necessarily live in excess, but it just wasn't a familial pursuit,
Mhm.
right? And it's funny, I mean, I'm a minimalist, but my unhealthy coping mechanism is shopping.
Interesting.
There's like
I
internal
have to dig into
battle
that.
all the time. All the time. I'm like, "Oh, it's been a hard day, Etsy." And then I'm like, "I'm not gonna buy that." You know? Um, but at one point, I remember I was looking for a watch for myself. I just wanted a watch. I wanted a nice watch that would last a while. And what struck me was this concept of quality over quantity.
Mm,
I found like a cute watch at Kohl's, right, for like $10.
mhm.
I was like, "Yay," and it lasted like 2, 3 months, this watch.
Yeah.
And and then I think I got like some sort of digital replacement, and then ultimately, somewhere down the line, I decided to get a watch from Fossil. And I thought, "This is gonna last.
Yeah.
It's gonna last." And I started looking online at just different concepts. I was looking for someone out there to validate the thoughts and experiences I was having. I wanted someone out there to validate this concept of quality over quantity, of this internal battle I had between monasticism
Mm.
and
Can you explain what that is a little bit?
yes. So I was to finish that one thought, the
Sure.
I was struggling between monasticism and then also just like buying stuff for my house.
Mhm.
So when I would think of monasticism, I thought of bare walls,
Mm.
having the minimal requirement for living. So in my home, if I were to have gone with a monastic approach, it would have been like we have our one Bible,
Yeah, okay.
we have a handful of plates, we don't have much on the walls, and we pray. We have things that we need and nothing more.
Yeah.
And having gone to Benedictine, and we had the Abbey on campus, so I was able to see very closely what monastic life was like. It was very intentional,
Yeah.
and I thought that that was so beautiful.
Yes.
Oh man, what if my life didn't have to have all of this noise? What if I weren't worried about having bathroom towels that matched my shower curtain?
I don't worry about that still.
Yeah, praise the Lord. Good for you. But at one point, like I love home decor.
Yeah.
So I would become quite easily preoccupied with those little details.
Yeah.
And I want to have this kind of arrangement and this kind of toss pillow. And like just I would get lost in those details. And anyway, I was looking for someone else anywhere online who had a similar experience. I found Joshua Becker, who is
Yeah.
on
I'm
his
familiar with
website, Becoming Minimalist.
it.
I
Mhm.
latched onto him real fast because I was like, holy cow, I didn't know anybody else thought like this.
Right.
I had no idea. So I think I started reading his stuff in 2012, which was right around the time he started writing.
Yeah.
And so he and I were kind of living parallel lives in a sense in discovering minimalism and living simply and the fullness of life that came through doing so. Right around this time, I found out I was expecting our third.
Okay.
So we were so excited. My husband and I lived with our two boys in a 1,200 square foot home in Louisiana. And if you know, Southern living, we didn't have a basement. So our 1,200 square foot house was really 1,200 square feet
Wow.
with horrible storage.
Yeah.
It was so bad. So we had a family party. We had a bunch of people over to the house to surprise everyone with, guess what? Number 3 is coming. And after we sprung it on everyone, and it was so exciting, and everyone was so thrilled for us, and congratulations and all that, one family member came up to me and said, well, when are you going to move?
Interesting.
And I was like, do we need to move?
Hmm.
Honestly, it hadn't even occurred to me. We had maybe a 2.5 bedroom house. I mean, technically three, but that third one was really more like a half than anything else.
Big closet.
And it was so tiny. It was like this little cupboard. It was so tiny, this bedroom. And we were a single income family. And I thought, okay, this is the home that God provides for us through my husband's work. And my husband and I have already agreed that this is the lifestyle we want to have, with me being at home with the kids. And so this house is what we can afford. And moving, as we all know, it's expensive.
Very expensive, even if you move across town.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, right?
It's just,
You talk about
it's more
that.
than what you think it ought to be. It is more than what it ought to be.
So I thought, okay, well, I'm not moving. And Andrew, my husband, expressed some anxiety, like, oh my gosh, how are we going to fit family of five and 1,200 square feet with one bathroom? How are we going to do this? And I was so convicted and I felt so encouraged and determined that I said to him, I'm not only going to make this house work for us, I'm going to make it perfect for us. It will be absolutely ideal. And I'll show you. And then I got to work. I had the hormones of nesting on my side, right? I got this like legal pad and I made a list of all of the rooms in our house. This is a small, sweet, modest number. all 4 rooms in the house. And underneath each room, I put different parts of the room that I most definitely wanted to purge. But I made a point to go into any given room and do kind of like a wave across the room. So I would start in one corner and I would do a wave across the whole, like all the walls, until I got back to that one corner. And I made sure I addressed like any furniture or storage in the middle.
Mhm.
And quite gradually, I purged our home of excess. And I was astonished. I couldn't believe how much we owned unnecessarily. And then I walked into our kitchen, which was this really pokey galley kitchen that had a washer and dryer in it. And it was just tiny, tiny, tiny. And we had this behemoth microwave, top of the line LG microwave, sitting on the very little counter space we had, taking up so much space. And I thought, I wonder if we really need that.
Mhm.
At this point, Andrew already knew that I was on fire for getting rid of stuff. And this is a rule that I have and something I convey to absolutely everyone that I work with, is that I would go to town on my stuff and on the kids' stuff because they were toddlers, babies. I wouldn't touch his stuff
Mhm.
because it's his.
Yeah.
So it's his job to do whatever he wanted with his stuff. But I was going to say I had no comment about how much he owned. That's not true.
Yeah, I would love to kind of dig into that a little bit because it's opposite in our family. Like my husband is the one that's like I have to convince him, like, you go buy some clothes, like he's very much more I would say monastic. Like he is just much more like, I don't need 5 pairs of pants. His rule has always been like one on my body, one in the wash, one in the closet. Like that's kind of how he's always functioned. I know, I know. And then he married, what does that mean? It's like there's people that keep everything and there's people that give away everything and they marry each other. That's
Yeah,
totally.
yeah, yeah.
So my husband has always like been very gentle with me, but always I can tell even for both of us that too much stuff makes us both angry and like anxious. And so, but he greatly respects my stuff. And I would say, and I'm not super proud of this, but like probably 99% of the stuff in the house is my stuff.
Yeah,
Or
right.
in my mind, I mean like mine and the kids. But that's a really interesting point that I would love to ask you about is how do you, as and let's just pretend, that there are stay-at-home dads maybe listening to this, but like, how do you as the main home manager, if you decide, there's just too much stuff for me to manage in this house, but like, it's not all mine. Like some of it's my spouse, and maybe let's just pretend the spouse is the person that picks up stuff from the side of the road and they're going to make up something from it or whatever. Like, what do you say to the person who's trying to manage the home to get rid of stuff so they don't have so much stuff to manage, but like it's not their stuff. And
Yeah, sure.
more importantly, and I have called Katie many times, like, what do I do about bedrooms, kids' bedrooms, and stuff like that, where it's just like, I know that rock is super special to you, but it's just a perspective of like, but you don't need that rock, or you don't need, my kids will keep literal trash. And
Oh, yeah, I
it
know.
is the most insane thing. I don't know where they get it from, but like they'll just keep trash. And that was
Mhm.
a joke. They get it from me. But like, when it's their trash, I'm like, what are you doing? You
Yeah,
can't keep trash, but so
watch me,
I
mom.
know I just like opened up a can of worms, but like, how do you, so let's just do this first. How do you talk to the people that you love about living in this space together, but maybe there's too much stuff? And so you're dealing with emotions of like, well, I want to keep this because it's special to me, because this reason and that. How do you even begin that conversation? And what do you say? Like, what are words that you would actually say to
Mhm.
convey like there's no peace in this home? How do you talk to like a 6-year-old about that, or a husband or a wife who is just like, I need to keep this because I'm going to do something with it?
Sure. Woo, girl. Okay.
Opinions, just give opinions. Maybe there's no solutions, like everybody has to come up with their own,
Yeah, right.
life
That's absolutely,
strategy, but like, what would your suggestions be?
yeah, right. Okay, so let's start with like the spouse step.
Yeah.
Um, so I am very easily convicted. When I find something that makes sense to me and it clicks with me, I am all in.
Mhm.
And so with minimalism and living simply, I realized how beautifully it supported the life that we were going for. And so I was all in
Okay.
immediately. I was like, "Oh, yes, this is what it is. I'm a minimalist. That's me. That's what I do. That's what we do." But then there were most definitely spaces where it was obvious that like m- my husband was not taking the same approach. I'm not going to say that he had all of this excess, not at all. But he most definitely had more, and that was emphasized by the fact that I was paring down so much,
Hmm.
right? So it
Mhm.
kind of acted as almost a foil in a
Sure.
way, right? And the more I was getting rid of our excess, the more delightful life became. I wasn't constantly cleaning up after the kids. They were, as toddlers, able to learn to tidy up after themselves. I wasn't stressed and overrun by our home anymore. That was remarkable. So that made a huge difference in my life and in my countenance.
Hmm.
It made a big difference in my husband's experience of me. So I didn't touch his stuff. But in time, he started to see, okay, something's different. What is this?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
It
I
was
like
really lovely because I didn't try to change anything about him.
that. Mhm.
I didn't it was very 12-steppy, you know.
Yeah, well,
So
you and
like
I both love the 12 step.
love it, love it, love it. Like, so keep my side of the street clean. All right. So what belongs to me is mine to manage. And if that means that there are too many clothes for me to manage, then let's get rid of some. Oh, and a side note with regard to clothing, if you don't like how you feel in it, get rid of it.
Oh, you're saying so many things that I'm like, I gotta keep notes because there's so many things that I want to hit on. So, okay, so just to round that out, what you're saying is to just live it. live it first. So maybe you don't even need to say anything. You just live it. And then hopefully your spouse will come along when they see your mood change. Maybe their life, well, certainly their life will change if you're not mad and cleaning up all the time or whatever the case may be. So they're going to see the joy that's coming from ditching belongings, and and then hopefully your kids, depending on their ages. I've got kids that are older and different personalities, so I would say one of them kind of feels like turning the Titanic around, like how do we how do we do this? And I'm
Yeah.
trying to set a good example, but that's hard. That's hard. I would say so just to take this in a little bit different direction, how do you, if you're the person that maybe has difficult time getting rid of things,
Mhm.
what would you say when you encounter those kind of people? What do you say to deal with the emotions surrounding belongings? Because I think that that's a huge reason why people can't part with things, is like, I got this on our honeymoon, or I got this from my grandma and my grandma's dead now. And I'm really attached to this because it's like kind of a term that I came up with, like legacy trash. Like, I don't really want this, but like, it's been passed down, Uncle so and so made it, and then, passed it to my grandma. My grandma gave it to my mom, and my mom gave it to me. And like, I don't know what's so important about this thing. I think we all have probably an object that's like that. So, or maybe just the fear, like what I was speaking about earlier, like when COVID hit, where am I going to get this stuff? Like, I remember during COVID, I was all of a sudden worried because there was all this talk about like shortages in every arena of life. And I remember like the year before, my Chaco sandals, which I basically live in the summertime, had broken. And I
Yeah.
didn't get any new ones right away, because it's Nebraska and it's like winter and cold. So I'm not going to be wearing my Chacos. It felt like for another 9 months. Well, then COVID hit in March, and all of a sudden I was like,
My chacos.
I don't have any sandals to wear, and I'm freaking out. Anyway, my good friend Brooke was like, I got you covered. Like, she had bought her daughter 2 pairs, one to try on, and anyway, they were my size. God provides for sure. But like, what do you say to those people that are either keeping stuff out of guilt, out of
Mm.
fear? I find my keeping is mostly out of fear. Like, there's only one of these in the whole world, and I happen to have it, but I don't really need it. But what if I need it later? Like, what do you do? How do you,
Right.
I mean, that's like a big, I'm asking you very loaded questions, but like, what would you say about the emotion piece of this?
Right. So we are body and soul, right? So we're going to be drawn to the spiritual and the physical, and both are good. And I think that's a misconception that a lot of people have about minimalism, is that it's that stuff is bad. Like,
Mhm.
no, it's not. It's not bad. It just needs to contribute some practicality or beauty to your life. Like, let's go with that, right? And so if there's a thing that you're keeping out of guilt, like I have a friend who has this brass reindeer, right? A brass reindeer. And it was his mother's, and it was her mother's, and he doesn't even like it. It's hideous to him, but his mama gave it to him as a gift.
Mm.
And she has kept tabs on like the inventory of his possessions, because he
Oh,
honestly
that's
is so
interesting.
little.
Hmm.
And he said, on this very sad day when my mother passes away, that reindeer is going in the trash. Like, he's just like,
That's it. I mean, not to be disrespectful, but like, if you're that attached to it, I mean, I would take it. I'm into collectibles. No, that's really interesting though, isn't it? When people give you things and then they keep tabs on like, well, it's Christmas or whatever season you set reindeers out. I don't know. That's Christmas to me, but like, where is it in the house? Like this game of Where's Waldo? And I don't
yeah,
mean to be disrespectful to that family member, but I have had similar circumstances where like I've been given things and then I'm not allowed to like paint it, refinish it, whatever. And I finally had to set a rule. If it comes into my house, it's mine, and
Right.
I will do with it what I see fit.
And
And
I think
I had to
so
say
important.
that to my dear sweet mama. I love my mom so much. So mom, if you're watching this, I but I understand it. I do understand it, but she gave me her sewing table that my dad had given her for their first wedding anniversary. She doesn't use it because later on in their marriage, he built her this beautiful sewing room. Like she's got an entire sewing room. And it's a beautiful 1970s, like it's really, really cute, but it needs I'm looking over here because it's right next to me. But it needs painted, and she was like, I was like, can I paint it or refinish it? And she kind of went, oh, and I was like, if I can't, I don't want it.
Yeah, right. I
And I
think
haven't done anything with it yet, but it's just this idea of like letting go and fully letting go. Mhm,
detachment is paramount to this whole thing,
mhm,
honestly. It's the ability to see things as things and people
mhm,
as people.
mhm.
And even though, like, I know that I have been the recipient of things that were quite meaningful to others and not nearly as meaningful to me. And so, like, okay, so case in point, a jar. Let's pretend that this is an heirloom jar and I've received this after generations. And for one reason or another, it doesn't do it for me. It's not the most precious thing in the world. Okay, well, great. So I will find someone who can use this better than I can.
Mhm.
Because the point of having material possessions is to use them to enjoy them. And if I'm not going to enjoy it, then okay, then who would enjoy it more? And
Mhm.
pass it on. That microwave that we had on our counter at one point, you said to Andrew, like, what if we just didn't have this anymore? And that was my first big, I don't know, it felt radical getting rid of a microwave. It felt radical as an American.
It is
We
radical.
didn't have a microwave. And so we didn't get rid of it immediately, but we put it in a separate room for like a month just to see if we would miss it. If we would be like, you know what, we are microwave people, let's haul that thing out.
Right.
After a month, 6 weeks, we didn't even notice. And a friend of mine put on Facebook looking for microwave recommendations. Ours just up and died this morning. And I was so excited. I called her up and I said, hey, you just want one? I have one, you come get it right now. Because that by that point, I was getting rid of enough things that I in time started to see things in their proper order, that stuff
Yeah.
was just stuff
Yeah.
and it was meant for blessing people.
Yeah.
She was over the moon. She was so excited, and so was I. My toddler cried. I don't
No more buttons. No more buttons.
know where about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think
um,
I really appreciate that because I grew up thrift shopping with my grandma. And it's one of my favorite memories from my childhood. And I continue that to this day. I love thrift stores. I love them. Um, so um when I can find things that other people have given, it reminds me of what a gift and a blessing when you can find things at a reduced price and it just like fits the bill for what you're looking for. And recently I've had this experience twice where so the church that I go to, we have this online, like amongst us women, we have this online like buy, sell, give, trade.
yeah,
And for the longest time I've wanted a bed skirt. And then I was like for my bed. And so I was obviously, what else would a bed skirt be for?
be a
Anyway,
few.
I don't know why I felt the need to clarify that. But anyway, so I was like looking for a bed skirt and I was looking online and I don't know, there was just something about like an $80 bed skirt that I felt was a little ridiculous. And so I was like, whatever, I'll just wait. I'll just wait until I find one. So I kind of put it out of my mind for, I don't know, for a while. And then all of a sudden a bed skirt, the same color that I was looking for came up on this buy sell trade and I like did the little emoji hand. I'm like, me. And that happened a few months ago too. We were looking for a table for our homeschool area in our room, and somebody offered up a free table. And it was just the right size, just what we were, it was beautiful. So I took it and like, did my little to it, paint, sanding, all the things. And
Yeah,
it was just perfect. And I love those stories where you can just give stuff to people who want it, who need it, who are looking for it. So where my problem lies is as much as I love thrift stores, I love finding stuff at thrift stores. This is just a little tangent, my little opinion. I feel like they've gotten really expensive lately, and
mm,
I don't love giving my stuff to the thrift stores so much anymore. I would much rather give it to people that need it.
that's
Anyway,
beautiful.
yeah, so I just today actually had an in-home rummage sale, and I just had all my stuff in a room. I only had two people come and look, but they found things that they wanted and took home with them, and I felt good about that. Like, getting rid of stuff. And some of it was absolutely heartbreaking. Some of the kids' clothes, I just have a really difficult, I think a lot of moms have a hard time getting rid of kids' clothes. Do you? Do you have
Yeah,
a hard time? You don't have a
don't.
hard time.
Okay, so I will say this when it came to getting rid of my daughter's clothes. So I have three boys and then one little girl and then another son.
Okay.
So when I was expecting our fourth son, who came after my daughter, we didn't know he was a boy yet. And I had just so many little girl clothes. Honestly, when I was expecting my daughter, she had too many clothes before she was even out the womb. I was like, girlfriend, your wardrobe is more amazing than mine. And
Well,
you don't even need anything yet. Oh
the girls' clothes are so cute. They're
my
so
gosh, we were in the South, y'all. So like, yes, girl clothes are cute and they are also like frilly and big bows and like you need a bow to wear to bed, you need a bow for the day, you need a bow for church. And the bigger the bow, the closer you are to the Lord.
well, here in Nebraska, you just need a Carhartt cap. That's all you need. You just the rusty orange Carhartt cap.
Praise God.
You're like, that's why we moved.
That's right. Jane, my daughter, she wears my Cubs hat all the time. And I'm like, yes, I'm raising this girl right. Um, so we had all of these little girl clothes. A lot of them were some really nice heirloom pieces.
Oh,
And some of them were just like super cute Carters, whatever, right? And I remembered, oh man, when she was 6 months old, this was my favorite outfit on her. When she was one, I put her in this all the time. And I could look at these different outfits according to her age. But then also, after we found out we were expecting another boy, I realized, okay, we don't need all of these right now. So many of the clothes that we've received for all of our children have been hand-me-downs.
mhm.
God does not cease to surprise in his generosity. We would be in need and then boom, like someone would be like, hey, I have two totes, do you guys want to go through them? And suddenly we would have more than enough. And so in receiving from someone else's excess, I learned, okay, like what if God wants to use me to provide for somebody else? And honestly, even if a onesie is really, really cute and has all sorts of memories attached to it, that's wonderful. Take a picture of it or frame a picture of the baby in that outfit and then pass the outfit along. It's not doing any good collecting dust in your closet. It's clothing, clothe the naked. So even now, I think I have two outfits from when my daughter was a baby. One of them is one that I wanted to save, and the other is one that she picked. And honestly, I would be fine parting with both if she were game.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah, because
Oh, I'm
clothing.
so like right now, what I'm feeling right now is a deep, like embarrassment. Just to be super real, I was just talking to a woman on my little buy sell trade thing when I was talking about was inviting people to my rummage sale. And this woman messaged me and she was like, hey, if you have any clothes this size for the girls, could you set them aside for me? I can't make it today. Sure. Anyway, so we got to talking about getting rid of stuff because the sizes she was asking for, I was like, but wait, your girl's only, this many years and you're asking for these. And I said, I do the same thing, but like, are they going to fit you or do you know what sizes I have? Anyway, she said, well, I just keep them for her. And she said, sometimes I end up with way too many clothes. And I said, well, I completely understand that because I just went through all of my daughter's clothes and I'm having very much the opposite experience that you just described, where so we had 4 girls in a row and then we had our baby, James. And the way our life has worked, there's generally just naturally about 3 years between our children. But I am kind of at an age where I don't know if we'll have any more children. So I'm feeling very convicted about like, why do I have bags and bags and bags of
Mhm.
clothes, particularly for the girls, because they're going to be like a decade old if we have another baby and if that baby is a girl. So I was feeling very convicted about it. But as you were talking, like, I don't know what it is in me, but when I talk to you or when we've talked about stuff like this, I get really like, what is my deal? I told this woman today, I said, I feel like when I give away their clothes when they're little, that I'm like giving the kids away. Like
Yeah.
that's almost the reaction I have where I'm like, there's tears. And I have learned the hard way because I've done like purges over the year of clothes, cards. I used to keep cards and we need to talk about paper clutter. Um,
I have opinions in case
Oh,
you're
and I would love to hear that. So like paper, cards, letters, yada, yada, yada. I'm super melancholic. Like I just feel things. And so I would turn on like my sad music because my sad music actually makes me really happy. So I'd be like just crying. So I've learned to just listen to like bands I've never heard of before, like punk, alternative punk that I have no, seriously, like that's, I have to like
You
do
like turn on All American Rejects.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's so I listen to my neuroscientist, Dr. Andrew Huberman, and he recommended this one band that's like his favorite band. And I'm like, oh, I gotta check this out because this guy knows everything about brains and emotions and everything. I can't even remember what the band name was called, like Riot, not quite right, but it was like Riot something, but it was like this little punk band. And I turn it on and I'm like, this is so not my style, but it gets me out of the emotion part of my brain where I'm not bawling my eyes out, getting
Yeah.
rid of clothes. But quite frankly, what I was going to tell you was that I have still too many clothes. Like I've picked out my favorites, but I have like 50 favorites per kid. And but I still had like boxes of clothes to get rid of. And
Yeah.
I'm going to just take this to like a vulnerable place, I guess.
Good.
I think from like watching on, I used to watch TLC a lot. But do you remember the show Hoarders? Or maybe it's still on. I don't know. I don't watch TLC anymore, but the show Hoarders, there was
Yeah.
always some kind of like traumatic event, usually. Like people would always say, like, I wasn't always like this. Or their kids would say, she wasn't like this until my brother died suddenly. Or she wasn't like this until dad left, or he wasn't like this until he had like a triple quadruple bypass heart surgery, or there was something major that happened in people's lives. And I can attest to that. Like I was always sentimental, but I wasn't always a keeper. And I think my keeping, particularly with children's clothes, is because I had so many miscarriages. And so it just became this thing where it was like like I can't lose another kid. And that's how it felt like, because so so I guess now would be a good time to bring in that you do work with clients.
I
When
do.
you have people, say in my situation where maybe they've had something traumatic happen and they're really trying to work through like these things aren't necessary for my life anymore. They're not necessary, but they're important for some reason because they kind of are like a a very tangible stamp of that event or a tangible thing from that person. And I think as Catholics, we can really understand that because we keep relics. And
The
so I've
relic.
tried to hold this intention like, well, I'm Catholic and we believe in relics and all these important things. And there's like even important places over in the Holy Land. So, like, why is it wrong for me to keep these clothes from my kids when they were little? Do you see? I don't know. Maybe I would just love to talk to somebody about this because I've listened to lots of podcasts. Like, I know you're familiar with the minimalists and maybe
Yeah.
Dawn, the minimal mom. I listened to them and they've spoken about certain things regarding this, but maybe you can kind of in real time with me go a little deeper here. Like, why, how can we hold this truth of our Catholicism and relics and these important things? What about the relics from like my children or my world? You know, what would you say to that? Or wait, or if you're working with a client, like how would you work with somebody through that?
Goodness. So that's um,
Fire hose.
yeah, I just love your big questions.
I will pay you later in high fives and hugs.
I'll be right down. Okay, so yes, all that's a multifaceted question. If I'm working with clients, and I have served both families, and clergy. So and even within families, just one individual, you know. So when it's very obvious that the need to keep things comes from something far deeper,
Mhm.
then I validate the heck out of that, because you cannot convince yourself or a client like, okay, well, yeah, sure, maybe it hurts, but like it's time to get rid of it. Get rid of it. You can't just say like get rid of it and hope that the person will arrive at that same space. You
Mhm.
really have to go full on Jesus Christ on them and like meet them where they are.
Mhm.
Okay, so I recently was working with a client who stumbled upon a box of all of her work from her master's degree.
Mm.
Her master's. This was grueling, sacrificial work that she did while she was having a family. And she's going through and having a master's degree, it's different from a bachelor's because, we go in when we're babies and we're like, I want to major in English. And then, but then we graduate, we realize what we really love. And then, like, okay, well, I'll pursue a master's in that. And I saw her going through this box and just delighting in it
Yeah.
and being so happy about it. So she didn't have trauma surrounding this particular box of collections, right? So she didn't have any of that, but she had a great deal of emotion attached to this box because of the work that she endured, because of the work she exerted, and the experience she had at the time. That's meaningful. That's important.
Yeah.
What I try to bring to my clients in time, so it's very slow, it's a good, slow, patient progression, is the fact that getting rid of the thing does not get rid of the experience or the memory or the person.
Mhm.
It's not disrespectful, especially when you're talking about parting with children's clothing or possessions from a late family member. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay if you want to hold on to that. You can hold on to that. There were times when I knew that I was in possession of things that really weren't useful. They weren't serving me. I wasn't going to need them at all. But I kept them for a little bit to give myself that grace, to be patient with myself. So specifically, I'm thinking of my late father's camera. My dad died in 2013, and I received a few of his old possessions, but just the ones that are meaningful to me, the ones that I can even use. So I have a couple of mugs, coffee mugs from him, and I love using those. And then I have this antique rifle that's on my wall, and I love it. I love it because I
I love
have,
the story surrounding that too.
gosh, the significance surrounding that particular antique rifle that doesn't even work, honestly, but it's still so important to me. I received his camera. My dad was a wonderful photographer. He was, God, I love when I find his photos. I'm like, gosh, this is beautiful. But I'm not a photographer. And at one point I knew like this thing is taking up some space. This was when we lived in that 1,200 square foot home. That's some valuable real estate.
Yep.
So I got in touch with my siblings and said, I have this. It's hard for me to part with it, but I would rather entrust it to one of you. And my brother said that he would take it. So I mailed it to him. I have no idea what he did with it. Maybe he said, I'll take it so he could just get rid of it for me. And that's fine. That's great. I've been that person for others before where I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. Absolutely. You know, um, but it was still so very good to honor my own emotional process.
Mhm.
That's so important. You can't just rip possessions out of a person's hands
Yeah.
unless they're like ready to get rid of everything, and you can't expect to do that to yourself either. And
Yeah, that I do you know, have you ever seen the movie The Pursuit of Happiness?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
the whole movie is just phenomenal because for one, it's based on a true story, but there's one part in that movie that just breaks my heart. And it's not at the end when like everybody's bawling.
Yeah.
It's when they're in hot pursuit of the guy that stole the little like x-ray machine from the dad, and the kid's got his one toy, and they hit the bus, and he like something hits him and he drops the toy, and he's looking out the window. I'm like, I know how that feels. Like I've never had that exact experience, but like when something is taken from you and it's your thing, that part gets me every time. And in Castaway, when Wilson,
Gosh. Okay, this is like a universal experience. You say, have you seen Castaway? And then a handful of people over here go, Wilson.
Wilson, yes, because it's like your things. So one of my favorite people on the whole planet is Jordan Peterson. And he talks about this. I mean, he's talked, I've listened to him talk not about minimalism so much, but like our spaces and how our stuff, like I don't know exactly, I can't remember exactly how he says it, but it's something like, are you your house? Like, because people would talk about like messes in their homes, and he would say, but isn't, because people would say, well, it's not a reflection of me, or how I dress isn't a reflection of me, or you can't judge me. But you can though, because it is you. It's
Yeah.
how you are in the world, and how you dress is how you are in the world, and your belongings are how you are in the world. So it's an extension of yourself. And so when I look around my house, I'm like, oh, got some work to do, and I think that's why that scene in that movie is so poignant to so many people, is because on some level we all understand that things as ridiculous as maybe a volleyball or master's degree work or children's clothes, it's an extension of us somehow. And so how do you treat yourself lovingly, and then like accept that that's just not part of your life anymore, and to let go and to just kind of move along, yeah,
Yeah.
move forward, move along. And that is something I've kind of meditated on all year, because I'm kind of reaching this point in my life where like, I'm trying to think about my future and my, things, and like making room for what kind of life I actually want. That's actually one of my favorite sayings. I think it was Thoreau maybe that said it. Or maybe it was Joshua Becker. Thoreau, Becker, I don't know. But it's perhaps the life that you dream of living is buried underneath all that you own. I think about that quite a lot. Like the life that I'm living isn't really the life that I want, but what's stopping me? Is it all my stuff? Probably, because I'm cleaning a lot. I'm like my relationship
Are
with
you
my
spending
kids.
your time?
How am I spending my time and how it affects my relationships, like I want my kids to have toys to play with, but golly, why do you gotta have so many? Oh, right, because I keep bringing them into the house for you, you know? So
Okay, can I speak to a couple of points in there?
please.
Okay, so one, it's good mentally for children to have fewer toys. It's
Yes.
better for them because children with fewer toys are more creative, they have better attention spans, and they have less anxiety,
Mhm.
right? And doesn't that sound like the kind of kid you want to exist right now?
It
You know?
sounds like the kind of adult too, right?
Thank you. So good. Um, and then two, when I also read that, the life you wanted is buried underneath all of your stuff. Pretty sure that's Joshua Becker. I
Okay.
don't think it was Thoreau.
I just wanted to sound smart.
Maybe it was
I
though.
gotta read Thoreau. I've read a few
George
pages.
Bernard Shaw, who said,
Marcus
um,
Aurelius said that.
Marcus Aurelius. I think it was Socrates who said, "Life you want is buried under all of your stuff." Okay, so this is like my favorite, and it is a flex, right? And I recognize that, but it is my favorite minimalism flex that I have. That I read that quotation and I realized I could go to Iceland if I wanted to. So in 2018, maybe the end of 2017, I was almost a year, maybe somewhere between 6 months and a year postpartum. I was exhausted and I was pining, pining for a getaway. I just wanted to go somewhere very far where there weren't any people. And I just wanted to experience something, anything.
Islands.
Right.
Alone time. That's like some serious alone
I
time.
had to go to Iceland to get a long time.
I go to Hy-Vee. I mean, kind of the
I think it might be as expensive as
frozen
Iceland.
section. Hy-Vee.
Frozen section.
This was
Actually,
what Katie must have felt like.
you open a freezer door.
Polar bears are like, hey, what's up? No, there's probably not even polar bears in Iceland.
There aren't.
I'm really showing my ignorance tonight. I'm like Thoreau, polar bears in Iceland. Yes, I homeschool my kids, and
It's fine.
it's all good.
So I really wanted to get away. And at the time I saw this movie, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and I was completely captivated by the landscape because
Yes.
it's mostly shot in Iceland. Even the parts that are in Greenland are in Iceland. And I had a friend who had already gone. And she was a wife and a mom of two little kids. And she went with a friend just cuz. And I remember looking at her and being like, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that epiphany coupled with this ache to get away, it was a wonderful propeller for me. And I started to look around, again, not touching anything that my family needed or my husband owned, but just my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to look around and think like, okay, do I want to keep this? Or do I want to stuff a few dollars in an Iceland savings? And when I would, even Like I got really into purses for a hot minute and loved my purses. And I would look at each one and I'd be like, do I want this or do I want a cup of coffee in Iceland? And because I knew what I wanted, it
Mhm.
was so easy. I had no difficulty being like, okay, well, purse, you were super cute, but you're not as cute as a cup of coffee in Iceland.
Mhm.
So I was able to just slice through a lot of that emotional difficulty, a lot of the hemming and hawing, because I knew what I wanted. Now, I wanted a trip and I got my trip.
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did. Praise God. And it's like the one of the most significant
Mhm.
milestones of my life. So maybe a person, a listener, doesn't have Iceland. Maybe you're like, well, shoot, I really love just staying at home in my own house. That's awesome. Okay, so what kind of life do you want in your own house?
Mhm.
And can you look at your excess and ask yourself, do I want this more than the lifestyle that I'm after?
Yeah, and I think too, like, just to add to that, I don't think it even has to be on a grand scale. So that's actually how I got through my recent, like, collection for my rummage sale, my indoor rummage sale. There were 2 things. I really started to think about, like, blessing other people because I know
Okay.
how many times I've been blessed with people's hand-me-downs or finding stuff at a thrift store that somebody gave away and they don't even know me. And they
Right.
I was gonna find it, but it was, like, exactly what I needed. Um, but the other thing is I just have this many more seconds to spend arguing with people about where we're keeping things or looking for stuff or whatever. Like my time has just become so much more valuable.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm just like melancholic and think about death all the time, but I'm just like I don't know. Like maybe my midlife, I've said this lately. I'm like maybe my midlife was when I was 29, you know, like maybe I'm past my midlife and I think it's because I've known some young people that have died, not to make this all uh like sad and everything, but I've known some very young people that have died within the last year and I'm just thinking like do I like I'm not exempt from that at all. And so do I want to spend even if I have 40 years left, do I want to spend that with you know, sifting through stuff? Like no. And we were talking about something earlier about, you know, when you're passing down stuff. I have been shocked, totally shocked at myself and other people. My both my grandmothers have died. They both of them lived well into their 90s and both of them have died within the last 7 years. And I have been so surprised at what I've wanted to keep and what others like my cousins and even my aunts and uncles like what everybody's wanted to keep like, one grandma died, house full of stuff. Of course, these are depression era women, right? Keep tinfoil, keep the margin, all the things. I had one cousin who wanted my grandma's flour sifter, you know, the can, like the flour sifter,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
memory of making sugar cookies with her. So that's all he wanted was her flour sifter. From that same grandma, I kept her tube of lipstick. She had this little container thing by her back door. And as long as I can remember and as long as she was able to get out her back door, she would always stop and she had a little mirror and she would put on her lipstick. And so I have her little it's so old, you know, and like I have her little thing of lipstick. And then I took hooks from her house because I loved the hooks from her house and I mean, I have a couple other things from her, but I was surprised, like, she had a really nice china and she had all these other things, and it was like, nobody wanted those things. We wanted, like from my other grandma, I wanted a spoon because I just have these memories of grandma at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they were
Uh-huh.
all worn on the side. Sorry,
Yeah.
that wasn't a very good, like, image here for the camera, but, like, just, you know, these particular things, I think we'll be shocked at what people want to keep from us when
Yes.
when we're gone and it's like I don't want, you know, I don't want your fancy tchotchke in your
Right.
cabinet. I want like your old t-shirt maybe or your whatever.
Yeah.
That was actually something that was heartbreaking when my grandma died. She had this one shirt that she wore all the time, and I looked high and low. My cousin cleaned out my grandma's house, and I was like, and I had a picture of my grandma in that shirt, and I was like, if you find this shirt, I want it. And my grandma had given it away like just I didn't even think to tell her. Like, when I think of you, I think of you in that shirt. And it still bugs me that I don't have that shirt, but I'm okay, and I think that's the other piece of this is that I as sentimental as I am, I have gotten rid of things, many things over the years that have been sentimental, or things that in hindsight I'm like, maybe should have kept that. But I always remind myself of what you said earlier. Like, I didn't actually get rid of anything or anyone. I got rid of the thing. But I also forget, you said something like this at one of the talks I heard you. Um, you were getting rid of like your wedding china or something. And I think Andrew was like, but it's our wedding china. It's from our wedding. And
And
you
I
went,
went,
but I am also from our wedding. It's just like, but I'm also from our wedding. And that really was impactful for me, because when I think about like my grandmas, I'm like, I am my grandma. Like, I
yeah,
share DNA with my grandma. So there's like no way I can get rid of my grandma, either one of them. Like, I am them essentially. So like, I have so many mannerisms and so many characteristics and values that they pass down. And like, what's better than that? Like, I don't need I don't even need this. I don't need the spoons. I'm probably never going to get rid of the spoons, but like, you know, like, I think we forget, like you said, we're body and soul, but what's more important? What's always more important? The soul.
yes. Yeah,
So,
isn't it fascinating how people now, people our age are when loved ones pass away, it's really interesting what we keep
mhm,
versus maybe what our parents kept
yeah.
or what another generation has valued. So, I mean, you wanted a spoon, your cousin wanted a flour sifter. Those are very practical things with significant memories tied to them. And I remember my dad making coffee every morning. I remember I fell in love with the aroma of coffee when I was just 3 or 4. He would be making coffee and he would take his Folgers tin and open it up and bring it down to my little face so I could just, and I would smell it and I loved it. So the fact that I have his coffee mugs, that's important and it's also useful.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, when it came to the wedding china that Andrew and I used once when we had our bishop over for dinner, and honestly, our bishop was so chill, we probably could have used like the chinette instead of the china. Um, and I think he would have preferred it. And then I think for one anniversary, we had like Dunkin' Donuts on a piece of china. So, but other than that, just stayed in boxes and it came with us wherever we moved. And I thought, this is silly. Like, why are we holding on to this? We
Mhm.
opened up a box and I thought, I don't even like this pattern anymore. It's
Yeah.
just not my style. So, yeah, we donated the china after I reminded Andrew that I too am from our wedding. And that was funny. He was like, yeah, okay, yes, yeah. Like, hold on to me. Let's get rid of the china.
You want to get all metaphysical on me? Fine.
So, anyway, uh, but it kind of goes back to the whole psychological and emotional component.
Yeah.
We can't make anyone part with something that they're not willing to part with unless we're willing to like do some damage. You know, I don't know how many times my parents would like present a trash bag to me and be like, fill it.
Mm.
And I'd be like, what do I do? And you better believe that as a mom, I've totally gone into my boys' room and been like, this is empty. I want it full.
Mhm.
But my kids, they're way more emotionally intelligent than I was at their ages. So at one point, my son came up to me and he said, when you come in here with a trash bag, I feel threatened.
Whoa.
And I was like, well, that's not what I mean, it kind of was what I was going for, but is that
Uh,
the best way to go about it? Like, no, no. So I remember telling my kids, when we get rid of stuff that belongs to you, I want you to keep your favorites. You
mhm.
keep the best. You keep what you love. I remember telling my oldest, I was kind of walking him through getting rid of some Paw Patrol toys. And he said, well, I used to play with that. And I said, right, but why can't I ever get you to play outside or do your homework or eat a meal? And he said, because I'm playing with Legos. And I was like, yeah, man, like you've graduated. So this was super great. And you've moved on. So let's let another little kid play with it.
Yeah.
That he could wrap his mind around. He wasn't losing anything, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing to instill in your children young. I have some children that are just more able to do it just on their own.
Yeah.
I have one child who just has really adopted my like, but it's special to me and I got,
Yeah.
and like I got to keep all the things and like I look at her stuff and I'm like, why would you keep that? I just I'm even as much of a keeper, it's not my stuff. So I'm totally detached and I'm like, why would you keep that? And then I
Yeah.
have another child who she's just, I don't need it anymore. Just totally doesn't have a problem with it at all. Not a big deal. Somebody else
Yeah.
can say it, whatever. And I really admire that about her. I mean, she's only 9, and I'm like, that's really amazing that you somehow are like that living
Yeah.
with me. Like, I don't, it's just really fascinating for one thing, but way to go. Way to be an example to me. Um,
Yeah. Hate.
yeah, and I used to have those moments too with my children of just like the angry, clean up this room because as much as I love to keep stuff, that's the really interesting thing about my stuff is it at the same time makes me so frustrated, because it's like I need a clean house to think straight but I also need my things and there's always this tension and I've gotten better over the years as I really do believe it's like it's a spiritual woundedness or something. I really do think that for me anyway is kind of the root of it. So as I've gone through like healing processes of mending that part of myself, it's gotten
Mhm.
easier to let go again. And so I don't have the angry outbursts of like, you guys, everything's a mess and I can't get my thoughts together. Um, but yeah, with the kids, it's just a real it's a training ground
It
for sure.
is. I know whenever I start with a new client, I tell them right off the bat, I am not naturally this way.
Yeah.
I am a recovering pack rat.
Yeah.
Because I kept stinking everything when I was a kid. I had a drawer, one of my dresser drawers was full of homework,
Hmm.
like graded homework. And this was homework that I had done really well at doing. This is homework where I liked the way I wrote my name on that paper, so I kept the paper. This was homework that I failed, and then I kept the failed homework as a lesson for myself, so I would work harder.
Nice.
I was like 8, right? Like, why am I doing this? Why? I kept everything, the special rocks, the special sticks. My room was such a disaster that so often my mom would tell my big sister, like, here, I'll pay you if you go in and help Katie clean her room.
Which might
And
have actually been a genius move, don't you think? Rather than like maybe mom. No. I'm reading your facial expressions. No.
hard to say, hard to say.
In
Those
our
were some tough times.
Yeah, well, in our family, sometimes that actually is better than like sending a sibling in than to do those kind of things than the mom, because sometimes there's too much baggage, if you will, to like go in and handle this. And so sometimes the kids are just like, what? Just clean your room, and and then it's fine. It's fine between the siblings
Right.
and okay, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your story, but
You know what? Send in the sibling. Um, my sister is 9.5-ish years my senior. So, she was like another mom to
Ah,
me.
ah.
And, so yeah, if your kids are a little closer, you send in the sibling. That's a great idea. Anyway, my sister would come in. I remember her finding this piece of wood that I had on my dresser. And she was like, "What is this?" And I was able to tell her, "Oh, that's a piece of driftwood from the first time I rowed a boat across the Chesapeake Bay."
And she was like, "Okay,
She was
and?"
like, "Why do you have it?" And I was like, because." And she was like, "Mom, she's keeping wood." And she didn't like, that's just, it wasn't important to her.
Right.
She didn't recognize like why I wanted to keep it, why it was important to me. And I completely get it. I completely get it. But
Yeah.
it's funny because those are the things that I remember that stinking piece of driftwood every time I go into a kid's room and I'm like, why? Why that piece of trash? What happened? Like, what? Why did you keep a corner of this piece of paper and not the whole paper? Like, what
Right.
happened? Because we as human beings, we have our reasons for keeping things. Are they good reasons? No. That's why you need, like, sometimes another set of eyes, another mind helping you through detaching with your things. And that's really great and beneficial. But it's also highly important to recognize, oh, okay, so maybe I'm keeping this because of the memory, sure. But what else is there? Why am I really holding on to this?
Yeah, I something you just said, like I listen to this guy and again, I listen to a lot of people that study brains and why people attach memories to certain things and how to have good conversation with people, especially when the stakes are high.
Mhm.
And the guy said, we aren't people aren't generally reasonable people. We're emotional. We make emotional decisions.
We
And so
do.
you do have to craft your words and your approach to people in a way that taps into their mode of thinking that is reasonable. And but generally it's just emotion. It's just emotion. And people don't buy cars because it's a sensible car. They buy cars because they like the way it makes them feel when they're
Right.
driving a car, or why we buy certain pieces of clothing. It's emotional. It's not, and we'll make up reasons to support our emotional decisions. And I
Right.
find myself doing that with stuff all the time. Like, well, I'm keeping this because
Mhm.
but really it's just emotion, like fear or comfort or memory or whatever. There's actually like zero reason behind it most of the time.
Right. We're really good at justifying and then listening to our own justifications as just gospel. We're like, no, 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 this is important to me. And right now there's the age we're living in is a double-edged sword because right now what has surfaced is this inclination toward validating our own emotions and our experiences. Is that important? Absolutely. Yes,
Right.
it is. But then instead of saying, okay, well, why do I feel this way?
Mhm.
Because emotions are information, right? It's just information. So it can make suggestions, it can tell you what maybe you think you need. But at the same time, sometimes I think we will stop at just validating emotion and say, well, I want it because it's important to me. And then we keep, or we justify and we're like, oh, okay, well, I justify from this emotional place in myself. And then we're like, oh, okay, well, emotional. Oh, and
Mhm.
then that's it.
Yeah.
So it's it's tough. I think it's important for us to, you look at the traumas behind people who hoard, right? I live next door to a hoarder who not only has an excess of just stuff on his property, but an excess of properties. He has multiple homes and they're full. And I think, what happened to him? What happened to you? Because that's not a natural thing, right? So it's important to look at these things and ask why, or
Mhm.
ask what's going on, and then to address that, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So instead of just saying, well, this is why, because, and then accept that as a satisfactory answer for keeping what should honestly belong to our brother.
Yeah, totally agreed. I think that's a good place to kind of
Yeah,
it
agreed.
for now, because I would love to do this again and have another conversation with you, kind of picking up where we're going to leave off tonight.
Yeah.
We just wrap up with this. Can you give us some advice going forward into the Advent Christmas season, how to make room in our life for Jesus, for other people as the holidays approach and we might be inviting people into our home, without causing ourselves too much stress or self-flagellation about maybe we should have done this earlier in the year, or how can we proceed into the prayerfully with kind of a clearing out mindset to make room for those that we love?
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so as we're approaching Christmas, there is a propensity to make Advent a mad dash for decorating, for buying, for parties. And honestly, Advent has become kind of a secular season of excess. So using that filter of what is it that I want to experience Christmas morning?
Mhm.
How do I want my Advent to look like? Do I want it to be really a time of joyful anticipation and of focusing on awaiting the coming of the Messiah? Okay, well then, once you answer those questions, then live from there.
Mhm.
So many of us get caught up in the buying of presents, especially for our children. And I think this is a pretty popular guideline, the whole something they want, something they need, something to wear, something to read. And we don't get our kids more than that.
Oh,
I
so
try.
you actually abide by that.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, and they love it. We love it. Especially like we'll open the books on Christmas Eve. And so Christmas Eve, everyone is on couches under blankets reading a new book and happy and excited. And I try to make their gifts as experience oriented as possible. So their rooms, I mean, what we live in 1,400 square feet. So that means that a lot of our stuff is like, especially in the kids' rooms. I mean, it doesn't look like this minimalist family in their rooms.
Not all beige with like cubbies and wooden toys. Oh, okay.
Man, it is not a catalog up in this house, let me tell you. But I think, okay, is this item that I want to purchase for them, is that just going to end up on the floor under a bed, neglected, unwanted, uncared about, you know? Or is this going to be something that they're jazzed for? One year we bought our son some fire extinguishers. Weirdest thing, he was over the moon, and everyone in the house, all of his siblings were like, "You got the best Christmas gift."
Yeah.
Because he was like, "Can we go have a backyard fire?" And we're like, "Yeah." And then we had the backyard fire with marshmallows, and he goes, "I'll put it out."
Yeah.
And he was stoked. He was stoked.
Yeah.
So when you make their gifts more about experiences, when you keep their gifts few, then you keep the focus on Jesus. What is this about, really? Is this about everybody waking up and getting a whole bunch of stuff? No, it's not.
Yeah.
So when you are examining the kind of Advent you want to have, the kind of Christmas morning you want to have, it looks peaceful, doesn't it? So make your calendar reflect that. Do you have to go to every Christmas party? Do you have to host? Do you really have to host? Be peaceful. Wait, you know?
Mhm.
So that's my insight with regard to Christmas and Advent. We don't put the tree up until Christmas Eve here. And that takes a lot of discipline just for me, because I grew up in a house where it was like day after Thanksgiving, baby.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was so fun and I loved it, right?
That's so
Um, and then turning on Christmas music, like, I mean, shoot, one of the stations here started playing Christmas music since November 1st.
well,
Um,
not to brag, but we've been listening to Christmas music all year because I have a Christmas baby and she loves her birthday. She loves the Christmas season. So we listen to Christmas music in April and in May and June and July.
that is the joy of the Lord right
All
there.
these people that are like, you need to stop listening to Christmas music. I'm like, I don't know. At the Hammond household, it is a year-long thing. And there's parts of it I love. It doesn't take away the magic, but I like your idea of waiting. I don't think people often think of Advent as a waiting period or even a sacrificial period to
Mm.
to get rid of the things that keep us from expecting our Lord, you know. I haven't been in that mindset for most of my life.
Yeah, same, honestly. I mean, it wasn't until a deliberate turnaround several years ago that I was like, oh, okay, so if I want this kind of Christmas morning, then that means I need to cultivate that within myself, which takes some doing.
Yeah.
And honestly, every year it takes a lot of effort against my own inclinations. But
Mhm.
gosh, it's so amazing. I mean, have you ever woken up Christmas morning and it's just like, oh, but then have you ever woken up Christmas morning and it's a really wonderful and joyful experience? That's
Yeah.
possible.
We definitely had last year we had a very peaceful Christmas. The year
Mhm.
before it was fun, but we were exhausted because we were trying to do too much. We got way too many gifts for each of the kids. And then last year, quite frankly, we just couldn't do it because I was down and out pregnant and
Mm.
then had a new baby. So I just physically couldn't, even online, I just couldn't wrap my head around like the jungle, as I like to call Amazon. I just
Yeah.
couldn't wrap my head around like the the tyranny of choice. Like there's just so many options for anything I would look up. I just couldn't. And I think last year that was the gift. My son, who was born, was my gift to me because he helped me see where, because I just physically couldn't do anything at the end of my pregnancy. And then after was just like breastfeeding all the time and
Yeah, right.
snuggle my
Right.
new baby. But I think that was the gift, is that it helped me see where I had gone. And I know people are gonna probably rake me over the coals for this, but like where I had gone wrong all the years before, because we really had to be deliberate last year, and we got each of the kids maybe 5 or 6 kind of smallish gifts, but they were deliberate on who that kid was. And
Yeah, right. That's the best.
I remember at the end of like the gift opening last year, my husband and I looked at each other and we both were like, we nailed it this year. It was like the first year I said that to him. I'm like, we nailed it. And he goes, we did. Because we got everybody just these small little gifts, but it was all stuff that they wanted and stuff that they still use. You know, and
Yeah.
so I was like, how can we repeat that? Like, how did we do that right? You know, so I'm kind of going like in the military, they do these after action reports. I'm like, right now,
I
doing
know.
my after action report, like, how can we recreate that kind of Christmas? And it was
Yeah.
because I wasn't busy, like I just couldn't do it. So even though I'm physically capable this year, I'm trying to do that. But that's excellent advice, just to like to stick to those 4 points. Can you repeat those? Something they want, something.
Something they want, something they need,
Okay.
something to wear, and something they read. And
Read.
the wear, I always thought of like pants, like no, like my
Underwear. They always need underwear.
they always need underwear. Are they going to be excited about it? No. But we got last year we got my 6-year-old this really great snow cap. It was like a
Uh,
Pikachu snow
oh,
cap.
cool.
And he freaked out and he wore it for like a week, just all the
Yeah.
time in the house. He loved it. He loved it. So,
So it could be
what,
like knee pads or something for their razor
yeah,
scooter. So just something they put on their body. It doesn't have to be like an article of like a button-down shirt or something.
normal clothing. Yeah, it doesn't.
Oh, that's cool. I'm
Can
glad you
you
did.
apply this to your person?
Yeah,
Great. Like
awesome.
that.
Earrings. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's great.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, Katie, I love you so much. You're one of my favorite
Love
people.
you.
And
Agree.
this was like so much better than I even expected it to be. So I hope we do this again. But in the
Yeah,
meantime, if people want to work with you, to have you come to their home and help them kind of sort out their stuff, or if they have questions for you, if you take questions, maybe you don't even take questions, but
good
if people
question.
want to get a hold of you for consultations, how can people find you or read about what you do?
Sure. So you can, I work with people locally in Omaha and in Lincoln and the surrounding areas. And then I will also work with people remotely. Of course, it's not going to be as involved, but it is something. You can find me at katieciba.com, and Ciba is SCIBA. So Ciba like scissors in science. So and I love questions. This is one of my absolute favorite things to discuss. It's something that lights a fire in me, and I love other people experiencing it as well and embracing it. So I'm here for it, you know.
Okay. Well, I want to do this again because this was so much fun.
Definitely.
I have like, I didn't even touch like probably 90% of the questions I had written down, but
Oh my gosh. Well, it's one of those like honestly, it's an endless topic. I mean, you could just
yeah,
talk for hours and hours about it. So
yeah, yeah, which is kind of oxymoronic, that it's like never
minimalism.
have so many conversations about minimalism. Anyway. All right. Well, I will be in touch and I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too, girl. We'll
Okay.
talk to you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay.